Plant Medicine Path, and tonight we got Scott Morrison. Me and Michelle met Scott a few months back, I would say maybe 4 or 5 months back, and
Yeah.
just watch him really evolve on this path, and what he's been through, and let him hear and let's hear a little bit about his story and let him introduce himself. How you doing, Scott?
Sure. I'm great. Scott Morrison. I work as an IT medical consultant for oncology. Um, but I grew up in a pretty strict preacher's family home. It was pretty strict. I didn't see my first movie till I was 16, and I had to sneak out of the house to see it. I wasn't allowed to go to like dances. I wasn't allowed to do any of that stuff. Um, Ended up going to Bible college and studying to be a youth pastor. And because of church politics, that just didn't jive with me too much. I just didn't. I wanted to help the kids, but there were, certain lines that the church wanted me to follow, and certain topics they didn't want me to discuss, and real topics that kids need to hear about. And they kind of wanted to keep it within their boundaries of what we could talk about. So I just felt disconnected and not able to work in my full calling. Um, the towers fell. Of course, everyone knows towers fell on 9/11. And I just felt a calling to do something. My enlistment date to the United States Army was 9/28/01. So my enlistment date was like 2 weeks after the towers fell. I was like at the recruiter like 4 days after the towers fell in that process. Sworn in on 28. Was in basic training. Finished up basic training in February of 2002. That sounds a little long, but in the military, when you're overlap those holidays and Christmases, you actually get to go home for a week in basic training, 2 weeks, and it really sucks coming back, knowing what you have to go back to in basic training, right?
Right.
It's horrible. But I wanted to be a combat medic, so I went to combat medic school immediately after basic training, which is about 16 weeks, and finished up that about July of 2022, and ended up in my first deployment in Baghdad in the fall of 2022 as a combat medic. Just a young guy, not really knowing what I was doing. A 16-week crash course in first aid, advanced first aid, basically, and scared out of my wits and saw things that I never would want to see again.
I bet. I bet.
And that turned into 3 deployments over the course of 6 years. So I was deployed again in 2004 in Iraq in the Kuwait area, and then I was deployed in Afghanistan in 2006. So it was constant, just like these deployments, where I would see a lot of stuff, where I would have to participate in stuff that was not. You have your blinders on. By the end of basic training, someone can go tell you that your drill sergeant can tell you to kill somebody, and you do it just because you're so programmed, right? But there were just certain instances where I was doing things that I'd never thought I'd do, like picking up the limbs of one of my buddies, promising we get it back in time to get it back on, and it was just not. In that moment, you don't know what you're going through.
Right.
You're just in that battle mode. I finished up active duty around 2008. I moved to Cincinnati, started working for Cincinnati Children's Hospital, making IV chemo for pediatrics, which is not another happy place to be either. So I went, just into that work, and picked up a solid drinking habit immediately out of the military, to where I thought it was just a normal way to cope. Like, oh, we go out and get drunk on the weekends, every Friday, Saturday, Sunday afternoon. Sometimes we go out on Tuesday night if it was a certain night at a bar, or a Thursday night. So it would turn into 4 or 5 nights of drinking. And I just thought, hey, that's normal. That's what we do. Fast forward to like about 2012, I was searching for something deeper. These guys at the gym started to talk to me, invited me over to their house for a Bible study, and I had no idea what this place turned into. And thankfully, they were finally getting investigated. But it was a religious cult where they teach the teachings of Christ, but rule over your life, rule over your pocketbook. 100% of your wages are given to the church. You live in houses together,
Right.
and they give you money back enough just to pay your monthly bills. So they provide your food and your lodging, but then your ass is theirs for the rest of
Yeah.
the time. Yeah. Um, so on top of all the military stuff, and they knew I had military stuff, but that was never really addressed because they didn't know how to deal with that. I was having night terrors, I was sleepwalking, and I was sober because I was in their community. But when I got the chance and when I got out of town, I would just, hit bars, and when I go home to visit, um, I would get, schlammered, you
Yeah.
know, and then come back to that environment where it's like, okay, we forgive you as long as you give us our paycheck. You can
Right.
stay here again, right? Um, 2014, my dad passed. Uh, in 2015, my mom was diagnosed with cancer,
Hmm.
and they wouldn't let me go home to see my mom.
Wow.
And that was like the last straw. And I left in the middle of the night. I basically had to, well, actually, it wasn't in the middle of the night. I faked sick while everybody was at church and made a little Scott shaped bed and covered
Right.
pillows and covered with the blankets. It was totally
Mhm.
like something you'd see in a Lifetime movie. And
Right.
just
Right.
like got in the car, drove home. Spent the last Thanksgiving with my mom. I actually spent in jail the night before because I got a DUI.
Hmm.
Um, was able to make it for Thanksgiving dinner, and thankfully my mom never found out what happened because I was staying in a hotel. I was able to bail out, but I wasn't there. I was really hungover. The last holiday, the last Thanksgiving with my mom, I was not present.
Right. Right.
You know, and spent Christmas with my mom. Took a position. Um, Took the first job I could get, and it happened to be out of state. Before that DUI stuck, I kind of just took what I could get, you know.
Right.
And 2016 July, my mom passed away. Um, so it just set off. During this whole time, I'm not getting treated for PTSD. During this whole time, my alcoholism is running rampant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I go through these like suicidal ideologies, planning out my death,
Right.
and I don't do it. And I come home and I go to a bar and I get drunk. I come home and I cry. I was the fun guy at the bar, but when I got home, I was just a
Miserable.
mess, right?
Right.
Just miserable. And that's the way things were going for quite a while. Um, I was still actually attending a church in town here during that time in 2016, and um, drinking, being stupid. 2017, I was driving home from the bar and hit a car. Kept driving. Police chased me down. I got out of the car and went to a seizure because I had so much alcohol in my system.
Wow.
Um, Taken to the hospital. Threatened suicide. Was in Park Royal for 3 days.
Yeah.
And you think that would have been enough for me to stop, and it wasn't. I went on another year. In 2018, I decided that was it, that I was going to kill myself. But before I was going to kill myself, I was going to go visit all my buddies on base. I was going to do like a base bar crawl, So
Right.
I drove and went to all these bases and partied with my brothers, and then got home on a Thursday and decided to go to the bar again. Got drunk, came home Friday, went to the bar. Saturday morning, I'm at Bass Pro buying ammunition for my 45, and a guy from the church texts me and asks me if everything's okay,
Hmm.
just out of the blue.
That call saved your life.
That call saved my life. Yeah. And I was at my first AA meeting that next night. because I just like word vomited. I'm like, this is what's going on, right?
Right.
So about 2 years into sobriety, I had gone through like all my 12 steps and I was
Yeah.
sponsoring guys, but I still hadn't dealt with any of the PTSD,
Yeah. The trauma.
any of the spiritual abuse from the cult,
Right.
the loss of my parents. You know,
Mhm.
it was still, and I thought I was fine because I was helping people, but I wasn't really helping myself. I wasn't taking care of myself. And my AA sponsor at the time, uh, we had talked, and he said, "Hey, you need to start looking at this PTSD stuff." So he had me write a letter um, to the guys that I had lost and the guys that I felt I was responsible for their death. Just as a medic, you just, you know, you lose people and you can't um, reconcile that with it not being your fault because you're supposed to protect, right?
Right.
So I wrote a letter and he had me bury it at the Cape Coral Memorial. And on the way home, he's like, "We need to get you some help, but I have the name of this guy in Austin, Texas. You can call him and start talking to him." And that was July of 2021.
Yep.
Um, and that was where things really just like started to change.
Yep.
Sorry, email open. Um, Julian, I'll drop his name in case anyone wants to contact him. But Julian Rosen out of Austin, Texas, remarkable mindset NLP coach. And unbeknownst to me, he walked the path of a healer, and I had no idea because a lot of men, you just don't attract male clients by saying, "Hey, you know, I'm a healer." You know,
Right.
it's more or less. So my first call with him was June 26th, and he decided that yeah, he was going to take me on as a client, and that but I was scared to death because July 4th was right around the corner, and I knew it was either going to be I was going to be taking pills to go to sleep, or I was going to be maybe drinking again because I was that close to relapsing, you know,
Right.
just because of everything that went on. He sat down and in one session did this like hypnosis NLP mind wizardry on me. And I slept July 3rd, you know, when people start early, slept through the
Yep.
night. July 4th, slept through the night. And I continued to just work with him, working on doing a lot of inner work, like all the trauma, like everything from the military. And he wasn't like, "Oh, we'll wait, you know, because this is too much. We'll just take little breaks here and there." And just every week we were just in it, you know.
Right.
Um, and so that continued till on a weekly basis till like February of this year, because there was just a lot of stuff to muddle through. And I had decided, you know, that maybe I could do this the same thing too, right? I felt like I was being called to it, um, and initially started working at a recovery center doing mindset coaching,
Mm-hmm.
um, and went to see Julian in March of this year and spent a weekend with him, and he was just like basically like feeding into me. Actually, the second day there, he's like, "Let's go to the park. I want to do something." So he gets me to this park in Austin, Texas. He has me lay on my back. He puts all these like stones around me. Um, Before I lay on my back, though, he administers Hape, which is the first time I've ever had it. You know,
Right.
first time I ever had it administered to me. Has me lay on my back, puts these stones around me, and he just does this like he just literally starts pulling stuff out of me,
Right.
like stuff that was just stuck, all these energies, all this bad shit that was just stuck. And my body was moving, my body was shaking, my body was like convulsing. It was just like this cathartic experience. And I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know what was happening at the time. I can look back and now I can say, you know, that's where my healer journey began. It was kind of like he knew what was going on. He knew what I needed to let go of in order to move to this next stage. Um, when I got back here in Fort Myers, I started um, seeing clients on a one-to-one basis, and it would be like NLP and hypnosis, but it was particularly like vets that just started. One would come see me, and one would spread the word, um, and it just stuff just started happening, and I started moving in that healing modality of using usually, like, you know, we'd sit down and we have a couple talk sessions and processing through and taking them through guided meditations, and I would say, hey, we're going to do this other thing. If you want to do it, you know, I'll serve you um, rape, serve myself, and then I'll start doing where I need to go, where I need to move, where I need to release things from you, from your energy field. And as I'm saying this right now, Mike, this is weird, but it's not weird anymore. And I can't, when I say it's weird, I attach shame and I attach fear to it, and it limits my ability to help other people. So there's still that part of me like, that's weird.
Right.
But, right? But
Yeah.
I attach fear and I attach shame to it. So that's the lesson I'm learning. But I've been, you know, working with some guys, just like working on their shoulder area, and they say that felt like a knife was pulled out of my shoulder. It felt like a knife was pulled out of my throat. It felt like a knife was pulled out of my back. You know, and just using that sacred tobacco, setting an intention prior to doing so.
Right.
Um, and it just bubbled over from there. You know, it was like I would have one or two guys a week, and it turned into sometimes five guys. You know, it was um, of course I had to take care of myself too, right? I would sit in Hape every day or Rape every day, so I wasn't like, so I developed a relationship with the medicine, and I wasn't just going through and, you know, doing that randomly to people.
You
Um,
built a pretty good relationship with Hape. You
oh
have.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then you've guided some of these guys to the medicine also, haven't you?
correct. Gonna take a drink of water real quick.
No problem.
So I you know, talked with Julian about psilocybin. Actually, my first ceremony I participated in, not so much a plant medicine, but still an Amazon medicine, is just combo.
Combo, yeah.
Yeah, and I've done it 6 times since.
Yep.
Um, and I remember my first ceremony. It looked like my purge looked like I had chewed up some licorice, and just, you know, it was all black.
Yeah.
My second one was gray. My third was yellow, and the last few times have been like clear with a couple of clouds, you know.
Yeah.
So that was where I had first started, and then started looking into psilocybin. And I talked to Julian about it because I'm like, I want to make sure I'm going about this right. I don't want to just like take this stuff and sit at racetrack, you know.
Right.
I want to respect the medicine. So
Oh, you
he,
want
you
the
know,
healing.
right. He
Hmm.
guided me into being like, okay, this is what you need to do to set the space. You need to prepare it with reverence. You need to say prayer. You need to sage your space. You need to sit with intention, um, and have the participant sit with intention. And I did that myself the first time by myself. And it was kind of an odd experience because my scale wasn't working. and I and
Right.
I kind of guessed, and I didn't really get the full effect from it till I actually fell asleep. And
We always
you
tell
truly,
people that scale's very important.
it is important, yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't take too much. I just, but I had, you know, dreams of seeing, you know, um, people just lined up, you know, wanting to be healed.
Hmm.
And I was at, you know, and my mentor and I were at the front of the line, you know, just working on these people. And the other, other ceremonies that I have participated in have been like very deep, um, very much connection with the light, because I still um, I believe in Christ consciousness. I believe in the vibration of Christ, and I believe in the healing light of Christ. And
Right.
that's what I call into these spaces, because that's what I identify with. That's what I know, and it's something that's very, very powerful.
Hmm.
I've had certain situations where I'll blow rape in someone's nose, and they immediately break down and just start crying,
Hmm.
and it's not because of the medicine, because it can be intense, but I don't make someone's first experience so intense they don't want to come back.
Right.
I'll use something in medium or low grade strength. Um, so there is that connection, and it's just really hard to describe fully.
Yeah.
Words don't do it justice. You know, my psilocybin ceremonies, like I've connected um, with the vibration of Christ, and I've connected, seeing myself as um, in former lives as a medicine man, but I was told, these medicine men were limited because they didn't face their demons, but you're different. Um, so things like that, and I had the privilege of attending a Diame ceremony in July.
Right.
For those of those that are not familiar with Diame, it's an ayahuasca ceremony, but it's done during the daytime
Yep.
out in Oregon, and it's done almost like ayahuasca is done like a sacrament.
Yeah.
So it's like a 3 day, 10 hours a day, 3 doses. Um,
There's a lot of movement.
a lot of movement, a lot of music.
Hmm.
Um, and the first day I had taken the first dose, and I was there with Julian, and nothing was really going on. And I said, "Hey, Julian, what's up?" I'm like, "I'm just dizzy." He's like, "Sometimes the medicine's got to work through you to know what it needs to bring out." And
Right.
that second dose, I was in the ceremony area, and everything just started pulsing. Everything was just too intense for me to stay in there. And so I had to leave the ceremony area, and I walked out, and they had this Diame cross in like an amphitheater and sand pit, and sat in front of that. And I heard like sand fleas in my ear. And I started to hear a chopper over my head. And I
Yeah.
was right back in Afghanistan the
Yeah.
rest of the afternoon. And I had a camo on. I was looking through my binoculars. Um, and I went to reach for my sidearm, and I reached for my sidearm, and I realized I've got white pants on because we're all in white.
Yeah.
It's one of the requirements of the ceremony. Um, and I get up, and this is about a couple hours after the second dose. I get up and walk, and suddenly this wrench in my gut. And I was kind of proud of myself because I didn't throw up. People were getting sick left and right. I was like, I'm the
Yeah.
tough guy. And not to be too disgusting, but I've never experienced a violent purge
Heard.
since that. Like it
Mhm.
was, I could hit the other wall on the other side of the room with like straight forward. So it was definitely something bad that had to come out of me, but I had to experience those moments back in Afghanistan again before I could leave my body.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's absolutely all of our traumas after time resonate into our bodies, and they just
Yeah,
sit there. And I think your story is so powerful, and it just goes back to show, there's a lot of this PTSD in the military, and there's not too much. I want to bad talk the military, but there's not too
yeah,
much they offer us after. And I see so many vets going through the same identical story as you go through, because people don't see the trauma you guys have seen on a daily basis. And then we numb ourselves to that. And then when they just let us go back to the streets without any way to heal that trauma. And I believe that these plant medicines have a beautiful way to heal these
yeah,
traumas. And then you can
definitely.
do the work, just like you just said. You have to go back and relive those stories, to relieve those stories.
Definitely,
And
yeah.
very beautiful, you know. And I think what you're creating in such a short amount of time just goes to show how all this whole process works. I mean,
Yeah.
you didn't want to be stuck there. And even though you went back there again here a few months ago, you knew that was the best thing to do for yourself. And it didn't scare you. It kind of enlightened you to move forward.
Yeah, it was after that first day, people could just tell a difference in my face. Like they're like, you look so much lighter. The next day was rough too. The next day was a lot of stuff with my dad. My dad was a preacher.
Mm-hmm.
You would say, yeah. Um, and I was, going back to my childhood where he was throwing chairs, across the
Right.
room at us, just reliving that. And the medicine was saying, I told my dad I forgave him on his deathbed because that was the right thing for me to do in order for him to go. That's what I felt like I needed to do. But that forgiveness in my heart really wasn't there. Those were words. And the medicine was like, you need to repeat out loud that I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you. And I sat in the medicine. I don't know if I said it 50 times. You know, Third day was a lot more healing. It was a lot more pleasant than warfare and child abuse. So it was healing, and the guy who led the ceremony had called me up to the altar and did some healing work with me, and it was, I spoke in languages I don't know what it was.
Right.
I had it was just very powerful. And then coming back from that and participating in a um, men's retreat that I just got back from. And me going to the men's retreat, it wasn't medicine retreat so much as a lot of like somatic breath work, um,
Right.
yoga, rage release, getting in touch with your warrior.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, I was walking in there and I'm like, I need to start addressing these doubts I have in my path, because there was
Mm-hmm.
always this little like, what the hell are you doing? Are you qualified to do this?
Right.
Do you even know what you're doing? Even though I had people constantly telling me you're doing the right thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's these little doubts. And I remember in somatic breath work, if you ever get the chance to participate, I highly recommend it. It just brings you to this state of your higher self, and whatever needs to go in your body goes in your body. And I was like on the floor, my solar plexus was being pulled up from the floor. So my ass was on the floor, my shoulders and the head were on the floor, but my whole midsection was just,
Look up.
yeah, it was just being pulled up. And, I
Mm-hmm.
was shaking. Again, speaking very loudly and gibberish. you know,
Yeah.
I mean, if those are light languages. Once you get to, not to get too ethereal, but once you get to like certain levels of light body, and letting that light into your being every day. And you don't
Mm-hmm.
need plant medicines to do that. That's just the
No,
state
you
of
don't.
being receptive and
Absolutely.
being and saying, hey, I want to be an instrument of light in this world through your meditations,
Mm-hmm.
that light entering you. And then that light is so absorbed in you that you have to share it with other people through the healing modality. And coming out of that retreat, I was like, I'm going to stop asking myself questions about this. I'm going to stop doubting it. It was clear. Got on the plane, or got to the airport Monday at 6 a.m. By the time I boarded the flight Monday at 8 a.m., I had 3 guys contact me asking for help in 2 hours on early Monday morning, asking for sessions that I've done this week. And then I had you ask me to come talk.
Yeah.
I don't think it was Monday morning. It might have been Monday afternoon, but it happened in that same container. It was like, what? Stop doubting, move forward, step
Mm-hmm.
into your calling. And I'm like, I'm
Yep.
not going to be shy about talking about it anymore. If someone asks, hey, what's going on with you? What's new with you? Then they're going to get the same thing you just got.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to, because I said, like, being ashamed of it, attaching fear to it limits me.
Yep.
So,
And it just, what your story does is create others to explore themselves. You know, like somebody said in the chat, sharing is what we need. I mean, we need people to share these stories and not stay so there's not enough of us sharing our stories. I mean, these good stories. There's a lot of negative stories, and your story is pretty powerful. I mean, I feel that most of your trauma has come way before your military. So, I mean, you even had to dig deeper than that PTSD from the military. You were digging deeper in that childhood, and that's where all
Yeah.
our trauma sits. I
Yeah.
mean,
It was just,
it's just a beautiful thing what you're doing and how you're processing it, and to like men have a really hard time with all these things, and to see a big man like you, because I mean, you're in that gym every day, you're doing the thing, you're doing the work. So, it's a testimonial for yourself that you shouldn't question yourself.
yeah,
We all get that imposter syndrome. I do every
yep.
day, but we overcome that, and that makes us humble.
That's exactly what one of the light workers said to me at the retreat. I had several light workers come up to me. Even they didn't know what was going on in my head, but they're like, "You need to stop doubting, and you need to move fully in to your healership, because if you don't," one of them said, "it'll kill you." And then she winked at me and walked away. So, you know?
Nobody's going to question you but you. Nobody's going to
Right?
question
Yeah.
you but
Yeah.
you. So nobody
Yeah.
really cares in the end of the day, Scott. In
Right.
all
Right.
reality, I mean, we all think everybody's. We really always look at everybody else to um, be our shining light, and we're our shining light.
Yep. Exactly.
Great story, man. We'll talk again. I love what you're
Yeah.
doing. I mean, can we just end this first? I mean, I know you're in Fort Myers, and I know you're creating a group. And, you know, I don't know if you want to get that out there a little bit, but we'll start posting some more about you on our Facebook page and on our website. But what you're doing is really cool, what you're creating and your story. And, I think you have a really cool ability to attract some good people.
Yeah. It's happening. I just no doubts. No
Yeah,
doubts.
no doubts, brother.
Yeah. Nope.
Love you, man. We'll
Love
talk
you too.
soon.
All right.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Ciao.